Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our ecologic lunch and learn. This is actually the last one for this year, so thank you for coming along today. Today's session will be all about sustainable seeding, and we'll be joined by the team from MRPV's Bogong High Plains Road project, our contractor Whelans, and they'll be talking to along with the supplier EnviroStraw to talk to you about the really innovative approach that they took there to instead of using my understanding is geo grids for erosion control to use hydromulching instead. So my name's Zoe Lee. I'm the industry manager with ecologiQ. I'll be your host for today, and along with me is my colleague Lily Rose, which I'll let you say hello, Lily.
Hey everyone, thanks Doy. Hey, I'm Lily Rose. I'm a senior industry advisor with ecologiQ. Looking forward to the finale of the Mayhem Lunch and Learn series today. Let's get going.
Thanks, Lily Rose. I can see the rooms are filling up as you come through. I would like to acknowledge, although we're meeting virtually, that we still meet on traditional lands. So, for me, I'm dialing in to you today from the lands of the Bunurong people of the Eastern Kulin Nations. I like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and also any Aboriginal or First Nations people that we might have with us here today, and also for people from the lands from which you're dialing in from. So I think I couldn't think of a better case study to finish on in terms of looking after the country and using our resources to really regenerate and replenish what we do, which is what this is all about with the work and with our projects. So I think for me it's a perfect synergy from caring for country, and also really we talk about being sustainable and being circular, in this case, really regenerating the landscapes and the lands in which we live and work and breathe on. So, yeah, I think it's a great way to kick off today's lunch and learn. But very quickly, intro to ecologiQ if you haven't come across us before. So we're a Victorian government initiative to instill the state's recycle first policy, and it's all about transitioning how we do business and how we deliver our projects towards what we call a circular economy. So I think we don't need to convince anyone here that we shouldn't just be digging it up and burning it and landfilling it. So we have tremendous resources that at the moment we call waste, and we can find innovative ways to recycle, repurpose, repair, and keep them in use, then that's we call that a circular economy. But I think that's just it just makes a lot of sense, really. So. And how ecologi's been doing that is through application of the Recycle First policy. So it's been in effect since March 2020. And what it really means that projects like the projects today, and exactly what they've done here, is that they've looked at what the project needs are, and where they can perhaps optimize using recycled or better materials in place, or in replacing or even avoiding using certain things. And secondly, as part of that, to report on the materials and the volumes used. So I'm happy to give the update that to date, the Recycle First policy has seen over 5.6 million tons of recycled materials being delivered through our state's transport projects, so road and rail projects. And there's a further 7.4 million tons of materials being committed to future projects. So enough to fill two MCGs. So and yeah, and we're expecting. You can probably see where the project's been underway for the last 5 years. There's been that real uptake, and I think that continual movement towards making this business as usual. So yeah. Now, without further delay, I'd like to hand over to our presenters for today. I'd like to introduce Patrick Newman, who's Environmental Manager with Whelans Group, and Josh Eaton, a revegetation specialist from EnviroStraw, to take you through today's presentation. So, audience members, if you have any questions for Josh or Patrick, please address it to them in the Q&A function in the chat, and I'm sure we'll have time towards the end to go through and answer some of those questions. So, Patrick, it's over to you.
I will start sharing. This one just here, I believe. Yep. Everyone see that okay?
Uh, Not yet from me, but
Share. We're actually going to
yeah,
share it.
there you go. I think it's coming on.
You seeing the full screen PowerPoint
Yep,
slide?
we're good to go.
Cool. All right. G'day, everyone. Welcome and thanks for coming. It's great to see so many people have shown up. Today, we'll have a chat about the Bogong landslide and how using recycled organic material, an awesome magic binding agent, and native seed, we managed to we managed to revegetate 2.5 hectares of super steep hillside in no time at all. So today we'll have a chat about the project, some of the challenges, the resolution and product details, some of the benefits of using the product we went with, the EnviroStraw product, a short cost benefit analysis, as well as some lessons learned from this project. So back in September of 2022, on a cold, rainy night in Bogong Village, nearly 5 hours from Melbourne, a massive landslide was happening. It was pretty big news at the time, so I assume a few people listening today would have heard of it. But the scale of this thing, when you first drove up to it, was truly unbelievable. Just seeing the thousands and thousands and thousands of tons of dirt slumped across a road where a hillside used to be, it was pretty crazy. When it was first discovered, the landslide was about 70 metres high and 100 metres wide. This made it the largest landslide experienced on Victoria's road network in 40 years. It completely covered the Bogong High Plains Road, which is the main access route to Falls Creek, but that's just the half of it. By some miracle, no one was hurt when thousands and thousands of tons of rock, trees, and loose material covered the road. To fix this problem and reopen the road to Falls Creek, we had to remove more than 600,000 tons of material off the slip face in just over 18 months. So, for 18 months, up to 25 truck and trailers wound up and down the Bogong High Plains Road. In the end, this worked out to be more than 21,000 trips. We restored one-lane access in May 2023 to Falls Creek, and as of May last year, we hit PC and restored two-lane access up the mountain. While there's no argument that restoring access was a brilliant achievement, at the end of the project, we were left with 2.5 hectares of highly erodible battor face, which was in desperate need of revegetation. And we couldn't just use any plants. The aim was, and still is, to ensure that once these plants are grown, the forest becomes all but indistinguishable from the surrounding national park, long term. The project was fraught with challenges. At the start of the job, the landslide was still moving, and although this was slow, it meant that there was a constant need for geotech monitoring as well as full-time ambulance presence on site. While the steep terrain, limited access, and harsh conditions made remediation of the slip pretty tricky, for note, we had both 160 millimetres of rain in 24 hours and a foot of snow while we were working on this job. These were challenges we also had to manage when it came to revegetation of the hillside. Specifically, when it came to revegetation, barriers we had to manage were the angle and exposure of the hill, the highly erosive soil, a harsh alpine climate, and the unique nature of the surrounding environment. Because of how unique this situation was, there was no easy path or nice guidebook that told us how to manage this. And to be honest with you, at times it seemed like there was no clear way forward at all. The hillside, at just a touch under 35 degrees, with a 15 to 20 metre drop between each bench, meant that any work on the battor face, including planning and installation of sediment controls, would have to be on ropes, which is an expensive and fairly risky exercise. The area we had to deal with was massive, 25,000 square meters, as I mentioned before. When you combine this with the highly erosive nature of the soil, it meant that whatever revegetation solution we came up with also had to provide adequate erosion protection until the vegetation was established. We had a pretty good idea of the erosive nature of the soil. As you can see from this photo, it just loved to wash away. However, this was confirmed by slaking and dispersion testing we did on the soil. Specifically, a consultant noted that the soil was unstable when wetted, with complete collapse of aggregate and fragmentation into smaller individual particles. Very unstable soil when wetted, high risk of erosion. So, what to do? Sure, we could just shotcrete the whole thing, but in the middle of the national park, I don't think so. Not to mention the cost of that. Furthermore, the overall aim was to match the revegetation of the surrounding environment. However, the unique nature of the subalpine forest that surrounded the site was just another spanner to be thrown in the works. Try finding enough tube stock in northeast Victoria to plan out 2.5 hectares. So we went out to market hoping that some landscaping guru might have a solution. After a bit of back and forward, we got a preliminary design. They wanted 300 mils of topsoil, held in place with pinned coir logs, planted with 6 plants per square meter, all topped with heavy coir matting, which was also pinned. Um, then they wanted that over all 2.5 hectares of the batter face. To be honest, we were pretty baffled with that proposal. What this meant in reality is that we had to import and place 14,000 tonnes of topsoil, which was next to impossible to get from anywhere within 250 kilometres. It meant adding an extra 530 truck movements and 1,800 machine hours. We also had to pin 4,000 coir logs and install 17.5 tonnes of coir matting, as well as planting 150,000 plants. It was pretty hard to get our heads around, to put it lightly. Not only would this be incredibly expensive, using a ton of resources, the increased machine and truck hours would have bumped up our carbon output by a touch over 200 tonnes of CO2. And that's not accounting for the embodied carbon in coir logs and jute mat that are commonly shipped in from overseas. But that's when we found our solution. It was actually at an earlier ecologic conference in September 2023 that we came across EnviroStraw. You'll hear from Josh shortly, but at the time he honestly seemed like an angel that had come down from heaven to solve all our problems. The Hydromulch product that Josh spruiked could be packed with whatever seed mix we desired, which fixed the problem of sourcing 150,000 subalpine plants. It was also jammed full of fertilizer to help the plants grow, which meant that at a pinch we could get away without topsoil. And it was all bound together with a glue that was strong enough to provide erosion protection until the plants grew, which helped us fix that problem. It could even be applied with a giant truck-mounted water cannon, as you see in this image here, which entirely removed the need for anyone to work from the steep batters, so a huge plus in the safety space there as well. Now, I'm sure everyone's here keen to hear a bit more about the Hydromulch and how it works, but first I think it's important to provide a timeline of where we are and how we got here. So in September 2023, we had a landscaping concept design issued, which I think we can all agree was pretty untenable given the site. Later that same month, we met with EnviroStraw, the magic moment. From here, it did take a lot of back and forward because Hydromulch hadn't been used on DTP projects before, but by 2024, we drafted a specification and presented it to DTP for approval. Then in April that year, we finally got the green light to spray some mulch, which would get some plants growing and hopefully fix our erosion problem once and for all. Now, to track how the Hydromulch was and the revegetation and long-term stability of the site are going, we adopted the landscape function analysis. And this is really interesting, actually. And I'll talk a bit more about it later. But the LFA process was originally developed in conjunction with CSIRO to objectively track stability, nutrient cycling, and water infiltration of a slope, basically to determine its overall stability and ability for its revegetation to continuously grow under its own stem. The Hydromulch is basically a mix. I'm sure Josh will give you better specifications on this than me, but it's basically a mix of blended down straw stubble, which is the recycled leftovers from a wheat harvest, and a glue, which is a slightly more advanced version of that non-toxic PVA that we're all eating in kindergarten. This is all mixed with water, any water, and seed, whichever seed you might need, and then sprayed out of the truck. This mix forms a blanket that protects the soil surface and provides a stable environment for the seeds to germinate. What's really cool about the recycled nature of the straw is that the recycled nature of the straw stubble makes this one of the only, if I think not the only, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Doy, only recycled organic products used in the industry. On top of that, there's no requirement for potable water to be used in the mix, which also saves a big amount of resources. And as if it couldn't get any better, EnviroStraw's Hydromulch is a Victorian product, which is made in Yarrawonga and largely sourced from surrounding farmland. This relatively short 177-kilometre trip meant that the 12.5 tonnes of Hydromulch, 1,000 litres of binding agent, and 115 kilograms of seed required to coat the whole slip could be transported in one truckload. This significantly reduced the carbon footprint of the whole operation. It's also only a 3-hour trip from Melbourne, so should anyone look to use Hydromulch on Melbourne-based projects, this project is not just suitable for landslides, and you actually might get better results in a milder climate like Melbourne. So definitely, I'm a big supporter. As another bonus, this option saved us a huge amount of money. Even compared to our original TOC budget, we made a 24% savings. And that was even better compared to the landscape concept design we were given. This solution saved 75% of the cost of that landscaping concept design. It was that was a pretty massive undertaking if we'd gone down that path. So now we're through all the nitty-gritty. Here's how the revegetation is actually growing. No, I'm just toying with you. This is from the first LFA inspection just after we applied the hydromulch, although it did take a while before we started seeing results. This is from August 2024, which was 4 months after the first application. When some of the cover crop here had started to germinate, you can see some of these small ryegrasses growing up in there. But but that was actually proving far less important than we had originally imagined to get that cover crop up and growing, because from the moment the hydromulch was applied, the erosion control was instantaneous. Previously, it had been next to impossible to control that coarse granitic sand that seemed to want nothing more than to stay where it was. To jog your memory, this is the image I shared earlier. For reference, the second batter in that image was only cut a few days previously. Already you can see that real erosion starting to form. But as soon as we sprayed, the erosion stopped. The hydromulch did an unreal job, and now we've got a good covering of grass across the entire site. Grass and native trees and shrubs, which you'll see in a second. And although the hydromulch is starting to break up in places, you've got these native grasses like there's juncus here, and there's poa grasses and dianella and running postman, like a whole assortment of native ground cover growing up in there. And they're starting to grow across the whole place, whole site, and hold it in place. We've even got eucalypts, wattles, and native creepers. So you can see here we've got a little blue gum popping up and a couple of Bergen plants, which is all surrounded by a lot of poa and other native grasses. These plants are currently about a foot tall, give or take, but by the end of DLP, we expect many of them to be reaching up around that 1 meter mark and to be germinating far more widely across the whole site. In this small shaded section towards the end of one batter, there are more eucalypts popping up than you can poke a stick at. And how well these plants are germinating and growing in an area where moisture is better retained shows us how important it is to keep water on that mulch in the early stages. And I forgot to mention this earlier actually, but it only took about 5 days to apply hydromulch to the entire slip, all 2.5 hectares. And that was with a little bit of rework. Imagine how long it would take to plant 150,000 plants by hand, let alone on a rope hanging off the side of a hill. So it was a huge time saver, this option as well. Now, before I mentioned the landscape function analysis that we use to track the progress of the revegetation throughout the DLP, some key aims of this process are detailed in this slide, but essentially it aims to assess an ecosystem's ability to be self-sustaining. It can assess the health and functioning of an ecosystem, assess its ability to retain resources like water, soil, and nutrients. It can help land managers, I guess, like we are in this case, to diagnose problems and assess baseline conditions, and essentially monitor the success of restoration projects by evaluating key soil and vegetation indicators. By assessing areas of litter accumulation, as well as areas of soil stability and permeability, the LFA process calculates how well an ecosystem can support itself. For example, in an area like this depression that's in this slide here, they're able to retain resources like water, soil, nutrients far better than a bare patch where nothing is retained. As you can see in this image, patches of accumulation have far better infiltration of water and nutrients and therefore have a much higher chance of being self-sustaining. Through this method, the LFA process has been successfully used to monitor the success of restoration projects through New South Wales and Queensland, although as far as I understand, it's the first time it's been used in Victoria, but I think it's really valuable and goes a long way to track objectively how well a patch of revegetation on a slope is progressing. So through multiple LFAs of the surrounding areas, we developed a set of target scores, which were built based on neighboring ecosystems that were thriving. Now these scores, these dashed lines you can see in this slide here are those target scores for stability, infiltration, and nutrient cycling. These These set like a benchmark level which would allow would show the slip how show the slip vegetation show a level at which the slip revegetation would be able to continue to survive without external input. Now, because the LFA is only carried out every 6 months with a rapid LFA assessment, which is a little bit less refined every month, the resolution is a little poor, but generally it's showing an increase with time. Now, there's a few factors that have attributed to the slight decrease or the slight downward trend in the recent LFA. And primarily, this has been deer predation, which has contributed to a reduction across all scores. The hooves of the deer break up the mulch in many places, which reduces the stability score. And that score will rise again as we get more plants growing. Um, and the deer have also topped a lot of the grasses and shrubs that are emerging, which has reduced the litter accumulation and in turn nutrient cycling and water infiltration. The slow progress at start was always expected though, to be honest. When the face was just a plain slope, there were no patches and interpatches that were shown in that previous slide to allow nutrients and water to accumulate. I'll just go back a second. So you can see in this slide where you've got like a depression or that could be a tree or anything on the actual slope that is allowing litter to build up and organic material to build up. That's sort of classified as a patch and contributes strongly to the LFA score. So when we don't have that in the early stages, it's hard to get much movement from those LFA scores. But as the vegetation progresses, we are expecting a lot more, yeah, a lot faster rate of improvement in that second year of the DLP because the veg is already starting to pop up, but we're as it starts to catch its own nutrients, we're expecting the scores to climb pretty dramatically. Now, even in the last few months of autumn, since we installed a deer fence, which tada got rid of the pest problem, we saw a big difference in the amount of shrubs, trees, and grasses that were starting to grow. So we are expecting big things from the next LFA. This project was pretty interesting, but it definitely wasn't without its hiccups. So here are some of the key lessons that we've learned. One is to have irrigation or some way to get water on the plants ready. We had 6 weeks of dry weather straight after we sprayed the hydromulch, which definitely contributed to the slow start. The irrigation wasn't functional until a few months after we sprayed, but as soon as we got water on that hill, the germination started and it's really started to grow. Number two is start spraying the hydromulch as soon as you can. Now, we were waylaid a little by the DTP approval process, but now it's been used and they've accepted how successful it's been. I'm hoping that if anyone else wants to use it, they can get it on early because if you get that mulch on early before the soil's had the time to dry out, it will grow a lot quicker and a lot better. And in our case, it would have given us another growing season to take advantage of, which would have given the plants a lot better chance to get established in the warm sort of early autumn weather when there's still a bit of moisture in the air. Um, Number three is pest control. We didn't really properly account for the scale of the deer problem in the national park. These things are literally everywhere. It's crazy how many there are up there. Um, in the end, we worked with a contractor just north of Albury to trial a cool 3D deer fence, which sort of plays on deer's depth perception. So the fence has got two layers, and they don't have to be as significantly strong as a traditional deer fence, but the deer wig out and don't want to jump it because they've got eyes on the side of their head and they can't see forward. It's a pretty cool concept, and it's been really effective. Um, Another bonus is it actually saved us about 35 grand compared to a traditional like 8 foot security style fence that's usually used. So if anyone is working on a project that has deer problems and wants to save a bit of money, sing out. We've got some good intel on how that works. So to wrap up, here's a photo of the slip face from last week. While we're still a while off a luscious forest, the constant growth of vegetation is really incredible to see. Um, since the start, like that image I showed earlier of the batter straight after it was sprayed, there really is just grass growing everywhere now, and it's really holding the slip together really well. Um, so who knows what to come? Maybe in 10 years, the hillside will look like this. So thank you all so much for listening. It's been great to share this experience with you. So please don't be a stranger. If you have any questions at all now or in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now, I don't know if there are any questions, Doy, but if not, we can run across to Josh.
I think we'll save the questions towards the end. So, Josh, I'll hop across over to you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Thanks, Pat. That was really interesting and great to see such an awesome result. And when it's fair to say at the beginning there was a fair bit of skepticism as to what the outcome might be. My screen sharing there. Yep, cool. Okay. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about EnviroStraw, who we are and what's in the product and what makes our product so exciting. So EnviroStraw was founded by Peter Carmichael back in 2011. Peter was a machinery salesman selling hydromulches into the market, and he saw a gap in the Australian market for a good quality Australian-made hydromulch, as all the other options for hydromulches were imported or outdated. We now supply across Australia into Australasia. We're supplying New Zealand into Asia and Papua New Guinea as well. EnviroStraw is all chemical free, and obviously we like that whole circular economy. The straw is pretty quickly sustainable and re-establishes very quickly in comparison to wood. So we have three main products that make up our EnviroStraw EnviroMatrix. So there's a recycled paper component. There's a bionutrient, which we often refer to as a fertilizer, but it's not a fertilizer in the typical sense. And then, of course, the straw makes up the main part of that. So the cellulose fibre, it's an important part. It acts as a bit of a binder in our product, and it also helps with the water holding ability. There's plenty of paper available, 17.2 million tonnes, and that figure could be dated now, and that's each year. It goes into a landfill. We process it, or we buy it processed. It looks a little bit more like this, like an insulation type product, and it goes into the mix. So it's not just a raw paper; it's actually treated, cleaned, and it's environmentally friendly. The wheat straw is obviously local to Victoria. We've chosen our location where we manufacture the product, as it's in a bit of a growth belt in Victoria. And Victoria produces about 4.5 million metric tons of wheat annually, and then the straw that is the byproduct from that wheat is just can be a waste product for the most part. That can be a problem for the farmers if nothing else. We're currently sourcing around 3,000 tons of wheat from the local farmers annually, which is a fairly small amount compared to what's actually available out there. So the more we can sell, the more benefit we are to the farmers. So in the southern Wimmera, 75% of the cropped paddocks currently don't harvest straw, and more than 20% of those farms are burning the stubble, which creates CO2 of 149 million tonnes worldwide. So that's not an Australian figure, that's worldwide, but that's still a huge amount. As a result of our 3,000 tonne, it's about 1,500 hectares of stubble that's not being burnt as a direct result of EnviroStraw purchasing straw. The third part is our microbiology, and this is an area that I'm just going to talk fairly loosely about it. So the old, if you remember the old joke as a kid, Constantinople is a very long word. Can you spell it? Well, I sort of leaned on that a little bit. People get a little bit, wouldn't say scared, but overwhelmed when we start talking about the microbiology of the soil, and that must be quite tricky. And it's actually not. We've got a soil scientist and a microbiologist that's in-house that created this technology, and he uses obviously a suite of microbes. There's around 24 beneficial microbes and mycorrhizas that he uses and freeze dries and puts into our biofert. The biofert also contains natural minerals that are actually a waste product from mining, so iron, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, those types of minerals. We we use them in their natural state rather than as a chemical form. So we don't use any synthetic or soluble fertilizers in our mix. The, the NPK fertilizers, which we typically see specified in these inroading projects and any projects, to be honest, are a synthetic soluble fertilizer that have actually come from the ammunition factories, or the old ammunition factories. Synthetic fertilizers became commercially available after World War II, when the ammunition factories had an ability to create these synthetic fertilizers. The big issue with using synthetic fertilizers is when you apply synthetic fertilizer to the soil, a third of that fertilizer volatilizes and becomes gases. A third of it washes past any plant roots, or they end up in waterways or into groundwater. And then a third of that fertilizer might get picked up by the plants as it washes past. By using our system, we store the nutrient in the soil, and the microbes will actually feed that to the plant and make it plant available. So it won't wash through. It'll sit in the soil, and it'll wait there until the microbe or the plant actually will communicate with the microbe, and the microbes will feed it what they need. So by doing this, we rebuild the soil profile. So as Pat was talking about earlier, the need to bring in topsoil is reduced, and we work with the soils that are currently on site to rebuild the profile of that soil and make them suitable for plant growth. As Pat said, those soils were pretty ordinary. There wasn't a lot of nutrient in them. We needed to rebuild it, and rebuild it quite quickly. Normally or typically in the past, you would have been looking at things like compost and amelioration programs and deep ripping to rebuild that profile, and it would take significantly longer than what we're doing here. So that gives us the ability to go from this, which is, but those really poor soil conditions that we had earlier, to this. We can apply it very quickly and easily directly onto the batters with the purpose-built machinery, the hydromulching equipment, which we've got contractors that we work with in every state across Australia. And then to get a cover on like this, and that batter now it's completely secured from erosion, wind, rain. It would take a huge rain event to actually upset that batter now, which we actually saw a few of them up in that area during this project. And then as we've seen these photos, we get germination. As we get that germination, the root mass binds to the soil, holds all that soil together. The biomass will actually create an erosion protection as well. That grass and root mass is the sustainable erosion control that we're all looking for. So what you can do to help us is demand locally manufactured recycled products on your next project. The only other hydromulch that's relatively available in Australia is an imported product out of America. It's a green wood fibre product that you might see that old Donny's wearing as a bit of a toupee there. But if you are supporting an Australian company like EnviroStraw, is a big step forward for us. We're a small company that are growing, and we need the support of these big projects to take our business and our programs to the next level. That's it from me.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks, Patrick. If it's okay, I might just take the screen share back. But now we're opening it up to the audience. Like, there's only one question in there. I think it's a comprehensive presentation from you both. Maybe you've answered all the questions. So let me just pull up the Q&A. Question from Adam. I think this one's for you, Josh. Where does the mining waste originate for the bionutrients? Can you talk about the mining type and location?
Yeah, so it's the product's made in Western Australia, and it's sourced from local mines around that Pilbara region. Yeah, and it's just a waste nutrient product that comes out of those mining industries. It's yeah, made by a fertilizer company. It's all again made in Australia. It's not imported. All local ingredients to Australia.
Yeah, fantastic. Um, the next question here coming in from Glenn, and how long was the approval process for the product? One for you, Patrick.
Yeah. Well, from I guess we first proposed it to DTP maybe so we talked to Josh in September. It was probably November before we built enough of a case to propose it to DTP, and then it wasn't until February that they approved it. And when they came up to site, though, they said, "We wish we'd come earlier. This is really great, and to see how it's progressing and how much erosion protection it provides almost instantly. It's like, so if you're going to use a soil binding agent on your site anyway to give you temporary erosion protection, you're almost better off going straight to this hydromulch because it works so well. And you go straight to that revegetation instead of having 1,000 middle steps in between. So it did, yeah, to answer it, it did take a little while, but now that DTP's across it, they are more willing to accept it on projects, and they're actually writing their own spec at the moment as well to have it included in projects upcoming. That helps.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Um, next question here. So please keep the questions coming through. This one's from Jane. Would using this product feed in the Recycle First plan or considered innovation and potentially used as an incentive depending on the contract? I think that could be a question for us. I think it does because I assume you've reported this in your Recycle First plan, Patrick.
Yes, I'm assuming it was. I was not on sustainability in that project, but I'm assuming it would have been. Definitely, it's a great, at least a great initiative to put forward
Yeah.
on that project.
And I suppose Jane, just the second question around would this be considered innovation? Um, I'm not sure if you're referring to the IS approvals. So I know some projects, if they have IS credits for innovation, things like that, there are some strict criteria around what is an innovation. So I won't comment to that, but I do believe it needs to either be could be a state first or an Australia first or anything like that. Look, to my knowledge, I think this is probably the first time that hydromulch has been used in a Victorian major transport project. I'm sure it has been used before. I know Josh, you can talk to other examples or not. But I do think that it has been used in other projects, but this might be the first one to my knowledge. It's been used in a major transport project, but don't quote me on that. So, next question. Sorry.
I was going to answer the questions. Has the project's remote location also contributed to its success due to the likely reduction of weed pressure compared to urban areas? Uh, but, Lily Rose, I'm not sure if you prefer to answer the question over me, but it has. We probably don't have enough information to say so for sure, but I don't. I think the Hydromulch would have been successful wherever you used it. Yes, there has been lower weed pressure because of, but more so because of the fact that we were dealing with a purely cut batter that was just raw soil underneath. There was no seed stock in that soil at all. There are a huge amount of weeds in the surrounding national parks, so I don't think that it's necessarily the remote location that reduced the weed load, but more the fact that we were dealing with virgin earth with no seed bank at all.
Yeah, typically we see weeds in imported soil, so that's another risk with importing topsoils, is finding a soil that's clean from contamination, whether that be weed or chemical contamination. So that's another benefit to actually applying the hydromulch and the biotic growth media directly onto those subsoils. It's clean.
Great, thank you. Next question here from Charles. Was the design revised to use hydromulch instead of shotcrete due to structural differences?
No. The design was based on what we could um, fit into the area to make the site stable. Revegetation of the site was sort of an afterthought, I guess. But the hydromulch was the best option given the design that we were working with. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. A question from Anonymous. Could hydromulch be used in smaller scale planting, or is it better suited for mass revegetation of large areas?
Can absolutely be used in small scale. There's lots of contractors around with smaller units, the 2,000 litre type machines. That machine that we used at Bogong was a 12,000 litre unit designed for large projects. But there are plenty of contractors around with smaller units that can do 50 or 100 square metres if needed.
Yeah, definitely. We had to do a little bit of rework because a section of the battle was actually cut after the final hydromulch. And we got a contractor in from Shepparton who just had the 2,000 litre trailer mounted unit, sprayed the small bit, cost us a fraction of the price, and he was out. It was pretty easy. Basically, I'll
And
just touch on that quickly. Basically, if you don't have a designed landscaping plan, if the landscaping plan is purely just for slope stability, then the general idea is that hydromulch will be more affordable and provide better stability throughout the growth period.
all right, thanks, Patrick. This one's anonymous, and look, I think this one we might have to verify post the event, but the question is, hydromulch applications are common across the civil infrastructure projects. Can confirm that this is the only Australian manufactured product.
There was another manufacturer in Queensland that's currently not manufacturing. There's talk that they may come back, but the American imported product is certainly the main competitor in the market at the moment. There are other smaller companies around, but nothing on a commercial sale at this point.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh. I think that brings us to the end of our questions with 3 minutes to go. So if there's no other questions, the audience, please join me in thanking Patrick and Josh from Whelans Group and Environmental respectively, for sharing with us, yeah, the great work they've done here on the Bogong High Plains Road project. So that's fantastic here, and I hope to see hydromulch being adopted and used more broadly across some of our other projects as well. So, Josh, Patrick, thank you for joining us today. Cheers.
For having us, guys. It was really good to give this presentation. So, cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to close out, I hope you've enjoyed our Lunch and Learn series and you've had a chance to catch some of the early ones throughout the month of May as well. If you'd like to get involved and you're not already on our Knowledge Hub, it really is the best place where we put up all our resources, case studies, recordings like of sessions like this. They're all up on our Knowledge Hub, and there's also a supply map and innovation register of products, and you can find other suppliers like Envirostro and other learnings from projects like Patrick. So if you want access, just drop us a line ecological.projects.vic.gov.au. Our next event is something a little bit different. So moving away from case studies, we're going to be kicking off with our innovation showcase again on Friday, June 27. So this is where businesses like Envirostro will be coming to pitch and present new products and innovations to market. So if you want to find out what's the latest and greatest from the circular economy sector, then I highly encourage you to dial in for that session and find out about new innovations being put forward to Victorian projects. And lastly, if you're not already, just follow us on LinkedIn. It really is the best way to get all the latest information. And you also heard earlier, Patrick said he came across Envirostro at our ecology conference. So I'm happy to report that we are having another green infrastructure conference this year. It'll take place on 29th, 30th of October this year at Melbourne Convention Centre. This time we're partnering with the Waste Expo. And the great thing about that is that to attend the trade show, it's absolutely free. So I'll come along down. But if you want to get involved in the plenary and other elements of the conference, there are ticketed events and things that you can get stuck into. You can find all the information by scanning the QR code there on screen. So we really hope to see you at our conference and trade show later this year. I hope you've had a great session today and enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a great weekend. Hope to see you all again soon at at our next ecologic event. Thanks all.
Thanks, guys. Bye.